Buying a used MacBook Pro can be a little bit daunting for some people because you want to make sure that you're buying something that's a good value, but you also want to make sure that what you bought is actually functional and good. So today I'm going to walk you through the key things that you should look for when you're buying a used MacBook on eBay. This video is brought to you by Dashlane, the safe and simple way to store and fill passwords and personal information. So for over a month now, I've been using Dashlane Premium to manage my passwords across all of my devices, and you guys know I have too many of those, so. Safely store sensitive documents as well as securely encrypt personal information. In addition to those features, Dashlane Premium also comes with a world-class VPN. So head over to dashlane.com/Miani with the link in the description below to get 10% off Dashlane Premium today. So the first thing that you want to look for when you're unboxing a used MacBook is to see how well it was packed. Now, this particular one looks to be pretty well packed. You can see it's completely surrounded in bubble wrap. That's a good start. So here's another fun thing. I just unwrapped this MacBook and you'll notice it has a packing slip with the name of a company on it. Now, this isn't always easy to tell when you're buying something on eBay. Sometimes it's kind of ambiguous whether you're buying from an individual or whether you're buying from a reseller or a company that's trying to sell some old inventory. So the fact that we have this packing slip in the box tells you that we have at least some amount of professionalism from this company, and that likely means that they've done some amount of testing and checking to make sure this machine is good before it goes out. But even having a packing slip, even having this bag that has the specs printed on a label, it's a good sign, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything checks out with this computer. I've had some mysterious issues crop up with seemingly professional devices, so let's take a look at this computer more closely and see if we can find anything weird. So what I have here today is a mid-2012 unibody MacBook Pro. It's not really important about the specifics of this computer. Mainly I'm just using this for demonstration, though you will see this computer show up in other videos in the near future. So the first thing that I want to do is take a look on the exterior and look for any weird damage that could have been caused in shipping or that should have been noted in the listing. And really, I'm not seeing anything. This MacBook isn't in the best condition, but it wasn't listed as being in the best condition, so there's nothing unusual going on. All right, so let's open it up and see if we can see anything unusual. Looks completely fine to me. What you want to do is check the keyboard, see if there's any crunchiness or stickiness, as that could be a sign of liquid damage. Also click the trackpad a few times, make sure the hinge is in working order. So that's really all that's necessary in terms of inspecting the exterior. You just want to make sure that your item that you received is lining up with what was described and what was pictured. This is especially true for something that you purchased without an image. Oftentimes sellers that sell in bulk will just have a stock image, so you want to make sure that you're not getting something that you weren't expecting. So the next step is going to be turning the machine on to make sure that it works. Now this is an older unibody MacBook Pro that has a hard drive, so that's going to add another step to one of the things that we want to make sure that we're checking and testing. But the first thing, obviously, is to make sure that it boots up and that nothing weird happens. Now I expect this is going to take quite a bit of time because this machine has a 5400 RPM hard drive, so I may be waiting a while. Alright, so now that the machine is booted up, we're going to check on the battery and the hard drive. This is something that most sellers won't put in their listing, but that you would definitely want to check out to make sure that everything looks good. Battery health and hard drive health are extremely important, so what I've done is downloaded two different apps. The first one is Battery Health. This is a really simple free app that you can get on the App Store, and it's just going to show you all the health about your battery. So if we take a look here, we're actually at 88% health, which is really impressive considering if we look down here, the manufacture date of this battery is May 15th, 2012. It's 7.2 years old. That means this is likely the original battery that shipped with this machine, and it has 1,119 cycles. So honestly, I'm kind of impressed that it's at 88% health. I was expecting it to be much worse. So the next app that we're going to use is called DriveDX, and this is going to diagnose whether our hard drive or indeed SSD is in good shape. And oh dear. So it looks like we have a failing hard drive. So this is actually a pretty common issue. If you're buying a used Mac with a hard drive, there's a very, very high chance that it's failing, especially if it's older than a couple of years or so. So as you can see here, this is listed as Apple HDD, which means this is likely the original hard drive. And you can see we've got some pretty major health issues that are being flagged here. DriveDX is great because it gives you a really detailed overview of exactly what's wrong. So right off the bat, you can see a pre-fail indicator being thrown up over here. If we scroll down, here's another one. There's definitely some serious issues with this hard drive. Now, the reason that you would want to find this out is oftentimes if you have to replace a hard drive like this, you can get a partial refund from the person that you bought it from. I've actually had this happen several times on the machines that I've ordered, and I've been able to get about $20 to $50 back, which covers the cost of not only replacing the hard drive, but actually upgrading it to a solid state drive. So it's definitely worth checking on the health of your hard drive. So then the next thing that we want to do is take the bottom plate off of the MacBook so that we can make sure that there's no funny business going on inside. With the back plate off, there are a couple of things that we want to check out. First is to see how dirty it is. You can see there's a fair amount of not only dust, but large particles that have made their way inside of this machine. So this is definitely something that we want to clean out. Now, it's not something that would inherently tell you that this is a bad deal or that we got ripped off or anything, but it is something that we want to keep in mind. You can also see how much dust is caked up on the fan blades, and this would also be a good time to start cleaning a lot of this stuff off. So as far as things that we want to check out, let's start with the RAM, battery, and the hard drive. Now, if you do have a Retina MacBook Pro, obviously the RAM is going to be soldered, so that's not going to be an issue. But if you do have one of these unibody devices, you can see this is Samsung RAM. This is not the original RAM that this computer shipped with, but it's Samsung, it's the correct speed, it's the correct capacity. There's nothing wrong with this amount of RAM, but you would want to check if there's like some weird janky brand. That might just be something to keep in the back of your mind. Now, as far as the hard drive, you can see here, there's an Apple logo. This is the original Apple hard drive, and this one's failing, so this is going to get replaced. Whether or not I can get money back is another question, but it's going to have to be replaced. Now, this battery, you can see here, I'll dust it off a little bit because it's a little dirty. This is the original Apple battery. Now, even though we know that from checking the battery health app that I showed you earlier, we still want to double check and make sure that everything looks good. You also want to make sure that there's no sign of swelling, as that can cause damage to the frame of the computer. This particular battery is heavily used, but not really an issue, so that is very good to see. So then finally what we want to do is check the logic board. You basically want to see if there's any corrosion, see if there are any liquid damage sensors that are tripped. So you want to make sure that none of those have been tripped, because it could be a sign that the computer has suffered some sort of liquid damage and then subsequently been repaired, possibly not well. Now, this logic board looks fine. I don't see any sign of corrosion, any sort of green or white crustiness. You also want to check all of the different connectors, make sure there's no corrosion on there, and that could just be due to humidity. It doesn't necessarily have to be direct liquid contact, but it's still something that you want to check and make sure. Just found this weird little piece of rubber or fabric or something. So, you know, the weirdest things will get into the insides of these MacBooks, and it's not necessarily a problem. You just want to be aware of that and be able to catch any major issues. Like, for example, I can see that the battery over here, one of the connectors has been snapped, which means this battery has likely been removed or perhaps jostled around a little bit. Basically, you want to put on your Sherlock Holmes hat when you're in here and try and see if there's anything that doesn't quite add up. So those are the main things that you want to be looking for when you're buying a used MacBook Pro, because let's face it, buying a used MacBook or really any used electronics is going to have some amount of risk involved. You always run the risk of it not being what was advertised, or there being something wrong that either the seller wasn't telling you about or didn't know about. Now, in my particular case, the failing hard drive was most likely an honest mistake. Most people aren't running diagnostic tools on their hard drives all the time, so when they sell their machine, they might not even know that the drive is failing. But that's why we do these tests. You want to make sure that you catch these things early on so you can work something out with the seller, whether that be a return or a partial or even a complete refund, depending on the severity of the issue. You want to get that out of the way as soon as possible. Now, fortunately, from a buyer's perspective, eBay is actually a very safe place to do business because they have such a strong emphasis on buyer protection after years and years of negative publicity about people getting scammed on eBay. Basically, if you don't get exactly what you ordered, exactly what it says and shows in the image, you can get a return and a full refund. Now, from a seller's perspective, this is actually really frustrating because I've had people that are able to get returns for absolutely nothing. I had a buyer one time who bought a 2010 17-inch MacBook Pro, this was about a year ago, and complained that it was slow. And I was like, my guy, it's from 2010, of course it's gonna be slow. He was able to get a full refund and a return on my dime because eBay sided with him in that situation. I had a buyer one time who was able to force a return because there was a small scratch on the bottom panel that I hadn't explicitly said in the description. The absolute worst thing that could happen is you buy something, it's not as described, and you have to send it back. You're not even gonna have to pay for the return shipping. So really, eBay is one of the safest places that you can be a buyer. It's not so great if you're a seller. It's more of a minefield in that situation. But if you're a buyer, there's not a whole lot to worry about, especially if you're thorough and you use these methods to check and make sure that the MacBook you ordered is what it was sold as being. So with that, I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe if you found this video helpful. Definitely consider joining my subreddit if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer in this video. And as usual, please consider following me on Twitter at LukeMiani. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.